I've got the sides all sanded now. I did that by clamping each corner in my face vise, starting with 100 grit, sanded down flush, then went through the grits, turned it around, did the same thing at the other end. My fingers weren't sticking out very far, so that was fairly easy to do. That's a good argument for just going just barely above the surface, when you set up the length of these fingers. So now I'm sanding these edges here. I started by sanding diagonally just to kind of minimize the perpendicular scratches. Now I'm coming back in and very carefully sanding up to each corner. I try to make sure the pressure that I'm putting down is directly over here. If you sand like this, it's very easy to rock that. I'm also trying not to round these corners off, so I'm just being real careful to keep everything flat. So yeah, as before, I'll go up through the grits and I'll do the other side. Now when I do this surface, it'll be the same thing. This is below this. But when I sand this inside corner, I'm going to put like a manila folder or something here to protect this, so I don't scratch this surface. And I'll set around both corners here, and then should be good to go. I'm going to put the hardware on now. I've got the box all sanded. I've sanded all the edges and rounded corners a little bit. So next is hardware. I'm going to start with the hinges. I had to find some screws. Fortunately, I had kind of a good selection of screws poking around. So for the hinges, I've got these number 4 half-inch long screws that are going to work great. The hardware for the latch, the holes are actually a little bit smaller, so I've got some number 3 screws for those. And the handle came with screws, so I'm set there. So in order to maximize my chance of success here, I'm not just going to hold this thing up here and start drilling holes. What I've done is I've figured out where I want the hinge, up and down, and I've cut a piece here so that I can set the hinge on something so it's really solidly held in place there while I'm going to be drilling these holes. I've also put some tape here just so it's very obvious. I did draw a line there, but it was too hard to see on the walnut. So I'm just going to hold that up against there like that, drill a pilot hole, and I'm going to use a self-centering bit, a VIX bit, to make sure my hole's in the middle. This bit, which I think is 3/32, maybe smaller, I'm not sure. It's going to work fine for this screw, although, part of the screw sticks through, it's not threaded. So I have another bit that once I've got my pilot hole, I'm going to go in just, no more than a 1/16, just to clear some of that material away so the screw doesn't bind. The other thing I'm going to do to make sure this works is I've got a steel screw that's very close in size to the brass screw. The thread pitch is slightly different, but it's close enough. I tried it in a piece of scrap. It works out great. I'd probably be okay just putting the brass straight in here, but brass is relatively soft. I don't want to mess up my screw. I certainly don't want to risk breaking a screw off. That's a nightmare typically to get those back out. So I think I'm in good shape. So go ahead and drill some holes. The other thing that I should point out is it's really important when you're putting in screws that you get the right screwdriver. These particular screws take a number 1 Phillips. When I was teaching, I often saw people just grabbing any screwdriver and, it might be the wrong size or it might be really worn. And, once again, particularly in these brass screws, it's really important that your screwdriver fits correctly so that there's no chance of twisting or busting out the feature there. Yeah, I should also point out, I've got something clamped on the back side of the box, so I can push on this and it's not going to go anywhere. You know, everything I can do to ensure success here, I'm going to do, because messing this up and fixing a mistake could take me a ton of time. So I'm going to put one screw in, and then I'll put the other one in. So I've got the length marked there. Make sure I go deep enough. For the other part of the hinge, the part that's going to be attached to the bottom, right, the box is upside down right now, I'll just do the same thing. Now, I did want to point out, this tape, I've got it folded over inside here because I want just a teeny gap between these two parts. I don't want the thing totally tight against each other. Probably wouldn't be a problem, particularly since there's a latch on the other side. But I really want to make sure that, if the hinge is too tight, the thing can close and then start to bind before it fully goes closed. So I don't know if it's going to make a difference, but I do have that there just to make sure that that does not happen. So same process on this side. Of course, I want to make sure everything's aligned here. Okay, that looks good. That stays there nicely. Aligns nicely. Before I put the latch on, I want to make sure you understand how it works. And when it's latched, these two parts are sitting right next to each other. So I could put them so the top is even with the underside and the bottom is aligned with that. But I think, kind of like before, I'm going to put a little tape there when I position one of these, just to make sure it's down just a touch, so that when this latches, it actually pulls down just a little bit. This next part is going to be a little tricky because when the latch is latched, it covers up all the screw holes. I can't get to any of them. So what I'm going to do, I've got put 3 layers of tape up here. I'm going to hold this. I think I'm going to clamp something on the sides here to make sure this stays centered. But then I'm going to just hold this in place and somehow do that so I can see it's centered on this other piece, and then I can do this bottom screw, and then once that one's in, I'll do the side ones. Got the latch on, now I'm going to put the handle on, so it's pretty much the same thing. I just want to show that I'm making sure it's centered by coming in from both sides. So I'll do the same process for installing those screws. Okay, hardware's all together. It works well. Unlatch it. I've got my dividers in here now. It latches nicely, nice and tight. There's no slop there. Handle's good to go. So I'm going to now take the hardware back off and finish it. I'm debating whether or not to finish the inside because it's an oil finish and it never seems to fully dry inside of a box. Anyway, I'll show some pictures when it's done, and I'll throw some cards in there too just to make sure everything fits. Okay, the box is done, all finished, all put together. I'm real happy with how it turned out. I think it looks nice. I like the colors. A little dark and light. Remember that was, I think, red oak. So it looks good. I've got the dividers in here, and I'm going to go deliver to my sister. She'll fill it up. She's going to take some pictures for me, so hopefully she'll send some decent pictures, and I'll post those at the end of the video.